what's really important in life is for you to get in touch with what your values are, so that you can create a principle-based life, right, based on your values. And once you've got that done, everything else falls in its place.
Oh, Christina Khoo, I am so happy to get to spend some time with you on the podcast and learn a little bit more and from you. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome, Matt. It's my pleasure. I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you.
Fantastic. Now, you are you're in Singapore. And
yes, I am.
I'm currently in Tokyo, so here we are. We're at least in similar time zones.
Yeah, just an hour difference, nothing much.
That's right. And just to give some context, we first met back 5 years ago when you were coaching us and teaching us through a coach training program in Singapore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Has it been 5 years?
Well, we had Dahlia on the podcast as well, and I think she and I worked out that it was 5 years ago. So
wow. Okay, 5 years then.
Yeah. And we've remained in contact ever since, and it's just been a joy. So, but you are much more. I mean, you're a phenomenal teacher. You're a phenomenal coach. You're a business person. You're a golfer, a baker, and a lot more. So I'd like to give people, just tell us a little bit more about the overview of who's introduced Christina Khoo to the world here. And
oh my gosh, now that you've listed all that down, I'm like, okay, how do I introduce myself? I usually tell people I'm no spring chicken. I've been around the block a couple of times. Yeah, so therefore I have had quite a number of different things that I've done and that I am, I guess. Yeah, so I'm a coach, loving it. That's, if you want to call it the professional side, that's the professional side, my executive coach. I'm also a facilitator, trainer, so that's all the business side. But I think the more interesting thing is I'm a human being who has got a mother, so I'm a daughter, and I also have a wonderful son. I have... I when you said baker and stuff like, ooh, okay, but I actually consider myself a baker. Not quite, but I do have interests. And that's what makes life exciting. So the business is the business, but I think there's a whole lot more about any person, not just myself, and sometimes we tend to allow what we do to define who we are, right? And I really want to just separate that and say, I am who I am. And I just happen to love coaching, and I happen to love interacting with people, teaching, sharing whatever I can with them on the professional side, but I'm still just me.
Oh, I love that. I and because it's all a big journey anyway. I mean, I remember practicing law for a few years, and I was a lawyer. Well, I don't practice law anymore. So it's a part of who I am, but it's only one part. And I love that. Yeah. And, like a lot of people who do coaching professionally, what I found in that world is that there's always a great story to sort of, nobody came out of it immediately coaching. Everyone's had some other experience. So now, are your original Singapore born and raised, or what was your...
Oh yeah, like born, bred, raised, everything in Singapore. Yep. Purebred.
So what does that mean? I mean, I've got a number of friends from Singapore now. Some of them are transplants, some of them are kind of locals, but what does it mean to be Singaporean?
That's a very interesting question. What does it mean to be Singaporean? Well, considering that I don't know anything other than being Singaporean, it might not make sense to you, but being Singaporean for me is, okay, one, I'm very grateful. So it's given me an opportunity to, all right, so let me clarify. Although I haven't been around, I mean, right now with borderless world in a sense. We don't
Right.
get to see, and I've got friends all over the world. So what it's done, it's made me more conscious of being grateful. And that might be a funny thing coming from a Singaporean, Matt. I don't know whether you know very much about Singaporeans, but Singaporeans are not known to be contented and grateful. Um, yeah, I mean we've got people say that we are the complaint kings and queens,
Yeah.
right? Nothing's good enough. Like oh my gosh, the train's 5 minutes late. It's
Right.
this. It's broken down. But I tend not to go down that way because for me it's all about gratitude. So Singapore is a very interesting country, I find. Yeah. People say it's a modified democracy,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you know what? I'm fine with that because I feel safe. It's wonderful. The infrastructure, it's so modern. And I used to chuckle when, early days when I used to travel to the States and people would say, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Singapore." And they said, "Where's that? Is
Yeah.
that part of China?" And right now I think everyone knows Singapore.
Yeah.
So that's
They
what
at least
being a
know of it and they
Singaporean
know it's an
means.
important place. Yeah. What
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
like back, what was it like growing up in Singapore as a child? What's it like to be a child in Singapore? It's because it's pretty small.
Um,
It's a pretty, it's geographically pretty small. I mean, and I
yeah,
don't say that in any negative way. I just mean when I go there, I feel like, oh, okay, I can feel the boundaries of it pretty,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What's it like
So
in terms
growing
of,
up here, well, Singapore, it's very structured. That's something that I think everyone will agree. It's very structured in a lot of ways. So when you grow up respecting. Okay? And it could be because Singapore is multiracial, right? Multiracial, multicultural, and it's a melting pot of Malays, Chinese, Indians, and very essentially an Asian influence.
mm-hmm.
So we grow up respecting. So we respect um, authority, we respect our seniors, we respect each other, and right now with all this racial issues going on, I kind of reflect back on my childhood in my school days, and we really didn't see the color of anyone's skin. I mean, okay, you've got a name that sounds different from mine because your
Mm.
Malay name means it has got to sound like that, or an Indian name, or a Chinese name, or your Eurasian name. But that was about the only difference that
Mm.
we knew. So even growing up as a child, we're always just respecting everyone. Of course, as you grow up, and maybe it's the influence, where you read more and you listen more and you kind of figure, is there a bit of difference? But really, just being me, I'll just put it aside and I'm just a human being just like everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And what were your interests when you were? I mean, you're doing coaching now and other things, and you help leaders do all kinds of incredible development. And um, you're one of the most present people that I have met. Too. That was one of the things that really struck me about you is how you're able to
Thank you,
just
Matt.
intentionally choose to put yourself in a present place, and you listen with such intent. It's just so powerful. So that
Thank
takes
you.
work. I mean, were you always like that, or were you always sort of like that, or was there a different version of you that changed into such a present
That's really interesting.
powerhouse?
I guess it does help that I'm an introvert, even though people would fall off their chairs. People who know me would say, "You introvert, no way." But I am an introvert, and I think I've been an introvert all my life. So being an introvert, I tend to process things internally, right? So as I reflect back on my childhood, my teenage years, um, I wasn't always the first one to speak, not because I didn't know what to say, but I really wanted to size up the room, see who was around. And that was just something that came, I guess, quite naturally for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Always wanting to be respectful of the people around you. Yeah. Not in a way where, I'm afraid to say anything. No, it's what will be the best way to say what I want to say.
Yeah.
And another one is, do I really need to say it? Is it appropriate? If it's not, then don't say it. Yeah. So that requires you to actually be present to listen.
Yeah.
Okay. Listening to, the stuff that we teach in coaching, it's about active listening, listening at all levels.
Right.
And I guess even as a child, was just being very intuitive to watch people's body language and getting their vibes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So maybe I was blessed that way, Matt.
Yeah. Well, it certainly sounds like, there's a lot of articles out there about the power of introversion. People think introverted means that you're somehow shy or you don't like people, and there's all this, and I think most people who have studied it at any length understand that that's really a vast oversimplification and not even accurate.
Yeah.
You're very sociable, but you just draw your energy from a different source.
Yeah, from a place within, right? From a place within.
Yeah. So you were born and raised in Singapore, and what were your early on, like what were your interests? What did you think you were going to end up being interested in?
Do you know in school one of the popular, almost, all the time you'll have, my ambition is as a composition subject, right?
Yeah.
What's your ambition? Right? My ambition is and I think it's so funny, my ambition was to be a teacher. Right? Or at least that's what I wrote in many compositions. And I think that was more because the only people that you interact with or you're exposed to were the people in school. They were teachers, and there were some that really inspired you. There still are people who inspire me. My teachers from the time I was in primary school, right up to secondary school, were still in touch. And they've really been inspirational in that sense. So that's what I wanted to be, a teacher. But of course, as you progress, you want to be a lot of different things. You want to be I remember there was a time that I wanted to be an air stewardess. And I was like seriously? Yeah. And I realized I wasn't tall enough to be an air stewardess. So that went out the window.
That's right. Yeah, the height requirement's pretty strict because you got to reach up pretty high. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to be a flight attendant for a while as a kid too. That was one of including being president. It was like president or flight attendant. Just because I thought it was so exciting to fly, probably like a lot of people, to be jet setting around. Yeah.
Yeah. Just the experience of traveling. I mean, as a child, I didn't come from a very well-to-do family. So traveling was, I suppose, the only holiday I went for the better part of my maybe 12, 13 years was hopping on a bus to get into Malaysia. And that was ultimate. It's like you have your passport stamped.
Ooh.
Like a bus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it was natural to say, oh my gosh, if I were a flight stewardess, I could see the world. But of course I didn't think about the thing that I had to serve people and clean up after them. I just wanted to fly and get paid for it.
Can I just sit in the seat and look out the window? It's like, no, they have a rough go of it. Boy, right now too, you can't, anybody in the travel industry and all that. It's just, your heart goes out to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you first took that trip outside to next door neighbor, Malaysia?
I think that must have been about 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12, 13. It was 5 lifetimes ago.
Like a school trip or
No, it was a family thing. So we all, and although they had planes that, you had the domestic flights, it was considered domestic in a sense because it was just to Kuala Lumpur.
Right.
But we couldn't afford that, so we went on a bus.
Yeah.
And it was exciting I guess it was exciting just to stamp your passport and to go into a place which is not your home, not your country, and to see, and I've been fascinated since then. I mean, just my neighboring country, Malaysia, there's so much to see. And of course, over the years, I've driven there up myself, flown up, done work, gone on holidays. just even to
Mm-hmm.
neighboring Malaysia, because you always get to see something that you don't get to see in Singapore, and maybe that's also me. It's just this curiosity, right? Like, oh my gosh, there's this thing that I've never seen before, or how is it that they've got so much of this, and what are they doing with it? So it's always this. I suppose curiosity is a great trait for a coach and a human being, I guess.
You read my mind. I mean, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, wow, because you are. I mean, I've watched you demo, your coaching, and you do have this. Now, when you're in a formal coaching engagement, you have to sort of be skillful with the curiosity and not let it go off
Mm,
into wild tangents. But you're so good at that of just digging a little deeper and pulling out stuff without an agenda,
mm,
which is
yep.
without judgment, I should say. There's an agenda, but there's not the judgment. Yeah. What's
Yeah.
really there?
Yeah.
What's the truth underneath that? Wow. So you've been in a lot of places. I mean, what are some of the other memorable that sparked the fire for travel? I mean, I know you've traveled all
Yes.
over. What are some of the other
Yes, I have.
yeah, what are some of the other places that you've been that bring up some good memories for you?
Well, I loved. I used to go to the States. I used to go up to the US every year for conventions, for vacations, and I love the US because of um, the different sites, the different places that I've been to. Yeah, so I've been to. Yeah, I just love it. I've been to San Francisco, of
Mm.
course, LA, Vegas. Uh, I've been to the Niagara, and
Oh,
that was awesome. But I did it on the Canadian side.
yeah.
Yeah, Hawaii, that was amazing. Yeah, so I loved Hawaii. I loved
Okay.
Hawaii.
Having lived in Hawaii twice, and as you may know, I went to law school in Hawaii, so I have pretty deep connections there now, and I yearn to go back. What does a person who lives in weather that is very similar in many ways year
Mhm.
round? How do you experience Hawaii when you? I mean, do you think, oh yeah, this is normal temperature?
The temperature was fine, obviously.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was not so humid, so that was good.
that's
But I
true.
tell you what I enjoyed about Hawaii. I took my son there and with a couple of friends.
Mm-hmm.
We stayed 2 weeks in Kauai. two
Ah,
weeks in Kauai. We played 36 holes of golf every day for 7 consecutive days, took a break of a day, and then we continued 18 holes every day for the rest of our vacation. So that's why I like Hawaii.
aha! It was a golfing extravaganza.
It was golfing. It was just being out in the open, the
Yeah,
sea, nature,
yeah.
the breeze, the sunsets, the sunrise, the what do you call them? The blowholes.
Oh yeah,
Everything about nature. Yeah. So
yeah,
even the Niagara was just the awesomeness of being in the presence of nature.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because growing up as an American and mostly West Coast based, although we moved a lot, Hawaii always had this, as with most people who have heard about Hawaii, kind of this idea of it being, it's a tourist place and it's
Mm,
almost like
mm,
Disney, you know.
mm, mm.
And when I first got there, I didn't realize how spiritual a place. I mean, it is like severely beautiful.
It is. I
it
like that.
just
Severely
it is
beautiful. It is.
severely, yeah. So I love that you had a good time there. It's such a special place in so many ways. Um, so you've traveled a lot, and you're also I think you were a business owner for a long time, weren't you?
Yes, I owned my own agency in the financial sector. So it was in the life insurance industry. I ran my own team. 25 years I spent there before I
Just a couple,
retired.
just a couple.
Just a couple, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just a blip.
Wow, 25 years of leading. Now, when you first started it, what was it like? What was it? Was it just a couple people and then it grew, or what was the sort of the life story of that business?
It's a very interesting one, Matt. I kind of stumbled upon that. Kind of stumbled upon that because I was working as a personal assistant uh, to this lovely, lovely English gentleman, and we were in an organization that was at the beginnings of producing computer stuff. All right, that was way back, and then the company was going to wind up. So I was at that stage where it's like, okay, so it's time for me to look for a job. What do I want to do? Right. And that's where all the crazy ideas were. Maybe I should fly, maybe I should this. And I kind of just stumbled upon this. It was a blind ad that I responded to, and it was legal at that time to have blind ads.
Wait.
Yeah.
Tell me about this blind ad. You mean in a
Well,
newspaper?
blind
It
ads.
was just
Yes, in the newspaper.
like
In the newspaper, it was, oh, we're looking for this kind of people. They don't tell you what the job was at. And I was just writing and sending my resume to every different thing that kind of piqued my interest. Just open to see what would come. Yeah. So when this opportunity came, I thought it was quite kind of strange. It was an interview. It was going to be a group interview stuff. And I remember telling my mom at that time, it's like, it sounds kind of dodgy, so I don't think I want to go. And my mom actually said, what do you have to lose? It's one evening, just go. So I went, and, this guy was basically recruiting for people to sell life insurance. So it was actually a life insurance ad. So it was, just went in, and I was just curious. Again, this curiosity kind of got the better of me. It's like, whoa, really? Is that what it is? And at that time in my life, and how many years ago it was, life insurance wasn't a big thing here. So it was novel and it was interesting. So I just signed on, and that's how I started in the business. So I started with no sales experience, zilch, and to me, everything is possible to learn. So it's just learning and giving it a go.
Wow.
And I just fell in love with it.
Tell me more about that. What was it that how did you tap into that drive? I mean, what was it that spurred on that love? As you said, you fell in love with it. So how did you know it was the right thing? Like, at what point were you like, this is it? I didn't know. You didn't know?
Yeah. No, I didn't know. I didn't know for a few years, but I just stayed on because to me it was a challenge. It was a challenge because I am not selling something tangible, but I believed in it so much. I loved the concept. To the point where I would look around and I said, everyone needs to have it. Why aren't people queuing up to buy it? That was the passion that I had.
I see.
It's like, you cannot be without it. So I just persevered, and then I was looking around to say, why is it again? And why is it that some people are doing better than others? What is it that they have? And then I started to interview people, learn from them, picking and just absorbing whatever I could, because I wanted to propagate what we call the miracle of life insurance. So that was that passion that just drove me.
Wow.
Was it tough? It was tough, of course. I used to joke, I still go back to the industry to speak to people about this. Yeah. And I tell them, it's like 3 times a year I would decide to quit because it was so tough. 3 times a year I'll say, oh, why am I doing this? But something just kept me going to say, I need to overcome whatever is stopping me. And if other people could do it, there must be a way that I could do it too. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how I can do it.
Right.
And then it became, the rest was history. I grew so much in the industry. I mean, honestly, Matt, the 25 years that I spent, it's not only being in the life insurance business, that's how I started it, but it was the interactions with people. It was the caring for people. It was the responsibility you felt when you bring someone in to try and help them make this a career. There's so much responsibility that I feel for that. And then you have to grow, because one of my mantras is you can't give what you don't have.
Well, right.
So I then needed to grow and be better and know more so that I could help the other people thrive in the business. So I spent the better part of the 25 years building up my own team.
Now, you said the first several years you had, and I think, if you read the entrepreneurial journey of most people, they say the first 3 to 5 years, it's just brutal. I mean, where you just have, I mean, I know from my own experience, it can be, I really relate to that. Waking up in the middle of the night going, what am I doing? And I'm going to fail.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, but do you remember at what point did that cloud of doubt sort of lift? I mean, we all have doubts, but that introductory sort of phase of cloud, and you went, nah, this is really going to stick. Okay, now I can worry about other stuff. Do you remember when that was, and what were the conditions that made you sort of realize that you were beyond that first point?
I guess it's maybe about after the third year, I would think, second, third year,
Okay.
when you have a comfort zone, so to speak, where you know that you can convert, you know that you have the skills, you're not grappling. It's kind of like second nature. You could do just the, that stuff and not freak out when you have to meet up with different kinds of people and stuff like that. And then when you win a couple of accolades, right? When you're able to achieve certain things, and the industry is always full of these achievements. And when you've achieved some of that and say, hey, you're not too bad at this. How
Right.
can I get better?
So
Right?
you had some
And I think
external validation too.
yeah,
Sounds like.
yes, yes, external validation from the achievements, the awards, but also from the people that I served. And I think that meant more to me. When people actually say, thank you, I really appreciate what you're doing, I know it's tough, and stuff like that. And even your clients respecting your time and saying, I don't want to bother you, and I've also heard about other people in sales where their
Right.
clients would treat them very differently, where they think that, they would, I wouldn't want to use the word abuse, but literally, they don't feel valued. But I had a different experience where people valued what I was doing, and all that validation did help.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What did you learn about yourself in those first few years? How were you different in year 3, and how did you see yourself differently in year 3 than you did in like, year 1?
I think I was different. Okay, what I learned about myself was that I was only scratching the surface, all right, of my potential. Yeah. So backtrack a little bit. I've always been a very good student. So I knew that I was, I could study. I really enjoyed. I was one of those nutcases who loved to study. Yeah. Yeah. And my brother and I were like that. So when we were young and, coming up to the exams, my brother and I would be studying till way into the night. And my mom would probably be the only mother on earth who would have to wake up at 2, 3 a.m. to say, can both of you stop studying and go and sleep? So
wait. I'm going to have to play this back later to just verify that I heard what I just heard. So your mother had to admonish you to stop studying.
Right.
Wow.
Go and sleep,
Please go sleep.
So I knew I could, the studying part was fun. So that kind of helped when I was in the business. But what I didn't realize was that the interaction with people. So I seemed to be able to connect with people well. And I think it was that honesty, that integrity, which is so important a part of the business. And I learned a lot. And I realized that the deeper I dig, the more my potential came up. So I learned, and I realized I could change. I could speak differently. I could, like, what you were mentioning, you could be a better listener. And there was so much resource out there. There are people, there are books, there are, so much resource on anything that I want to learn. So I just went on this hunger to learn, right? And really getting into this lifelong learner kind of mode, signing up for courses and doing, one of my favorite things throughout the 25 years in the insurance industry, I really went deep into the self-development. What else can I learn? So it's not the technical stuff, but just curious about me, and then curious about people. So I went I actually went to the States to do all of Stephen Covey's
Ah,
courses.
right.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I did everything, and I just loved it because I learned a lot more about myself. And that's where I also found out things like what's really important in life is for you to get in touch with what your values are,
Uh-huh.
so that you can create a principle based life,
Right.
right, based on your values.
Right.
And once you've got that done, everything else falls in its place.
Yep.
The decisions you make and so all these were all the things that I learned during that 25 years in the industry. Did I make mistakes? Hell yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a lot.
Any notable mistakes that you still draw on today?
Yeah. Well, when you're dealing with people, because I had to recruit people. So one of the classic mistakes, which one of the classic mistakes was that when I was recruiting someone, I allowed my emotion to come in. All right.
Mm.
So I would connect and I'd sit down and I say, "Oh, Matt, I just connected with you and I think you're going to be brilliant." Right. Even though I saw that you may not be a right fit, but I kind of push that back. Everything's possible. Yeah. So sometimes that over enthusiasm, because as far as I'm concerned, everything's possible for me within my control.
Right.
And I tend to project that on people. So I would bring people in and try and make them into something that I think they ought to be.
Yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
do I relate to that one? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all from the goodness of my heart. It's not to change you
Right.
in a bad way, but, you know, kind of like a God syndrome, right? And, that
That's a
was
big
difficult.
one. And sometimes in
Yeah.
my experience with that one, they are the right person, but they've given you every signal that the timing isn't right. It's not, they're not in the right place. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that'll be okay. With me, I can help,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, no, listen to that. They're telling you
Yeah.
they're not, it's
Yeah.
not the right time.
Yeah. So the people
Uh,
management, the people interaction,
mm-hmm.
I think that was huge. That was huge. I mean, I had um and right now, looking back, and we're still all in touch. All the people that I've brought into the business, some have left, some have stayed there. They've kind of created a big WhatsApp group, and they still
Yeah.
call me boss on the group.
Do they?
And there were people there. Yeah, I
Of
mean, it's
course.
nice, right? And there
Yeah.
are people there who I know became the
Mm.
person that they are because of the interaction within my organization,
Mm.
right? And then there are some that became the person that they are because they left the organization,
Right. Yes.
right? But it's all good. But when I was in the industry, it was this ego that was, I think, possibly what was hindering me from developing further. Right. So it's very easy when you're a sales organization. It's all about numbers and you're achieving. You tend to think, that ego just gets in the way of everything. And that's what I learned when I was dealing with my people. And of
Yeah.
course, as the years went on, you mellowed and you actually got to see things clearer.
Mm. I mean, we all have an ego and we need an ego actually, but
Yeah,
it can be a strength and then it can be a real liability. How do you
absolutely.
yeah, how did your ego impact you as a young, really an entrepreneur? I mean, I think that's fair to say you were an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
new industry, new
Okay.
place.
The plus side of having an ego is that sometimes that sense of infallibility,
Mm.
right? It's like, oh man, I've done it before. I know how to do it. So there's that fine line between confidence and being an egomaniac,
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so that's a part that keeps you going. Um, the downside of it is where you stop listening, right?
Uh-huh.
Where you know. And I think this is really, I mean, when we study the brain, right? It's confirmation bias. I only want to listen to things that confirm what I believe to be
Right.
true. And
Right.
if anyone says something otherwise, it really got to me. It
Right.
really got to me. Yeah. So and these were all the hard lessons, And I'm very blessed that I've had people who would come and tell me. All right. And I was quite well respected, but I was also quite feared in
Mm.
some in some sense, right?
Mm.
My son used to say it's because of the size of my eyes. He says, and my mom used to say that too. She says, if looks
Really?
could kill, people around you would be dead just looking at your eyes.
Why? Because they would get really big and intense, or like,
Yeah,
ah,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I
yeah.
see.
So, but then there were people who would, there were people who would challenge me,
Mm-hmm.
and people who would put me in my place. And that's where you learn, learning to be humble,
Mm.
learning to be open to yours is not the only opinion.
Right.
And it's okay to have two different opinions and still be all right with it.
Yeah. At what point do you remember thinking intentionally about self-awareness? Was there a point at which you went, "Oh, I need to encourage people around me to tell me the truth," or did you just kind of naturally kind of create a culture where there were people who could
Oh,
come and tell you what was really going on from their point of view?
it was very early on in my management, when I was leading, because I was an individual producer for a couple of years, and then I decided I was going to build my own agency, right? So when I started having people, and that's when you realize that, oh my gosh, people are so different, and all that. So as part of the creating an environment for the people, not so much for myself, but for the people, I realized it had to be an open environment.
Mm-hmm.
So we would actually have our annual getaway, our annual meetings planning for the next year. And one of the key elements in that program was always a feedback,
Ah,
right? A
okay.
feedback, yeah. So and we did it in all sorts of ways. So everyone had to give feedback to everyone individually. So we would have a 2-3 day stay somewhere,
Yeah.
and that was going to be it. And but it was guided in the sense that you would have to say, this is what I appreciate about you, and this is what I don't appreciate about you, or would like to see different.
Yeah.
And you have the 3 days, no excuses,
All 3
that you would have to
days.
find someone to say, hey, can I just book you at after dinner tonight and just have a chat? So I would give you feedback, and the rule was that you cannot defend yourself. So it was just taking it as a gift and say, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you can give your feedback. So it was that. And I allowed myself to also be one of the participants. So
Yeah.
everyone had to sit down and tell me what they appreciated and what they didn't. Was it painful? Yeah. It was painful for everyone, but it was also wonderful
Mm.
for everyone, because then you realize that most people walk away from it feeling empowered, like, I didn't know that people noticed this about me, and that's a strength that I didn't even think it was a strength. So from
Ah,
then we did it every year, and it became an open environment in that sense.
yeah. I don't know if I don't have the statistics on this at hand, but my sense is that up until the pandemic hit, um, just being out there, it's like there was less and less time for that kind of activity, that businesses were doing less and less of that. And it was kind of scary to me, because ultimately, if we can't have a way to talk to each other, then eventually, something bad's going to really happen, because you just can't go on like that forever. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Wow. So if you could go back to yourself, just answering that, I love that. It was a blind ad. A blind ad. That's so crazy.
It's hilarious, right?
If you could go back to your younger self, and give yourself a pep talk or advice, what would you say? Not that you needed it. I mean, things worked out pretty well, but what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell myself to trust myself a lot earlier. Yeah. And that I think that's why it was difficult in the 3 years. Not only the nature of the business, but not having had a lot of work experience and interactions. I tended to be a bit more self-critical, right? Like and second guessing yourself, and okay, let's try this, and not to. So it's the second guessing myself. Right. So of course, hindsight's 2020, right? So if I had to go back right now, I would just say, just go for it.
Yeah.
because it was a lot later on. Then I realized that, oh my gosh, your life is for the taking, literally. I
Yeah.
mean, you could create anything you want in your life, all right, by just deciding, is there something that you want bad enough? And there's just so much resources. I think people are just not utilizing the resources that are all around us.
That are
And they say, oh,
available.
I can't do it. There's no such thing as you can't do it. I think it's a matter of whether you won't do it, all right, or you don't
Right.
see a need to do it, or it's just not something that fits you, so don't do it.
Right. Right. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people are, I think, afraid of a whole host of different things, sometimes, and it can be very limiting. I mean, we all have our fears, and overcoming fear. You just said you would tell yourself to not doubt yourself so much. And
Yeah.
I'm recalling a conversation I had with a very successful entrepreneur in the States who built a business and sold it for oodles of money, and is an investor now. And I asked him what he would tell his younger self, when he was first starting out. And he said, I would tell myself to enjoy the ride a little more. And for him,
Nice.
it was an issue of being so intense through that whole experience and kind of blocking off that he could have still done it. I think what he was saying was he could have still achieved the success, but been a little bit more well-rounded and enjoyed some other things along the way. But you seem like someone who's always strived to find some joy along the way. So I'm just curious. Yeah. What are some things that sort of help bring joy into your life, and some people who really helped you along the way too? Who are the people that have made the biggest impact on you over the years?
Well, the thing about joy, yes, I think for me, one of the important things was balance. And again, maybe it was intuitive, just always making sure that I'm not burnt out. Not that I never was burnt out. Yes, there were periods, but always holding myself back and say, hey, there's more to life. We need to enjoy. And that's why I love to travel. Wish I could travel more. Friends, hanging out. And I mean, I'm an introvert. So when I'm talking about friends, it's not like wild parties kind of hanging out, right? Yeah, but it's just having those timeouts. Yeah, the timeouts where I don't need to worry. I don't need to be on people's beck and call and stuff like that. I never believed that the work that I did, or that I do, should be so all-consuming that there's nothing else in my life. Yeah, right. So that balance has always been something that I've always strived to ensure that it's there. Yeah. Influential people, my dad for sure. Yeah, my dad was a great salesperson. I mean, from the time I was young, I always remember him being a salesperson. I didn't know what he was selling, but I know he was a salesperson. And I learned a lot from my dad in his demeanor. My dad is he passed away a couple of years ago. My dad was the family person. He was the glue that kept the larger family together. He was the one who always had nice things to say. He was the one who would always be providing food, and therefore I'm cooking and baking right now for the family. So to him, he always believes that family is important. You need to get family together.
I see.
And this is in Singapore, so Singaporeans do nothing but eat. So therefore, we cook and people will come. Yeah, but he had a heart of gold. My dad had the patience. He was very patient, and I think I picked that up from my dad, because I remember somebody said this to me, that I had patience the size of an ocean. Right. So yeah, Dad was very influential in that sense.
What? Just curious. What was he selling?
He was selling ball bearings.
Ball bearings. Okay.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Wow.
When I was young, he was selling ball bearings. Yeah.
That's
and
incredible.
then but my dad was also a very because he was a salesman all his life. Of course, the latter part of his life, he started a cleaning business. So he was providing cleaning services for exhibitions and for hotels, not hotels, but hotel convention spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my dad's people skills were amazing.
Mm.
You know, he just had this aura around him. People liked him. People would give him business because it was him. You know, and I think I picked that up from him. It's the people that makes the difference. I mean, the product is the product, but who is the person
Right.
who is delivering that?
Right.
You know, so that's what I learned from him. So he was really great at that.
Wow. Wow. It sounds like he was a very special person in the family and for you
Very,
personally. Yeah.
very, yeah.
Yeah. How about your mom? What's your mom like?
My mom's hilarious.
Is she?
She is. So my mom had a very sheltered life because of my dad. So my mom didn't work. You know, she's one of those that she was a housewife all her life. Yeah. So and she and dad were, yeah, two peas in a pod. So when he passed away suddenly about 3 years ago, I had to take my mom in to live with me. And that was a learning experience for both of us because mom and I are completely different.
Okay.
We're very different people, and we live in the same household. And you know, and I bless her soul. I mean, even at her age of 81, I can see her trying to, you know, to adjust, just as I'm adjusting. Yeah, remembering I'm an introvert. I've been a widow for very many years, right? So I've been always alone, just me and my son. So it was my nice bubble, you know, to do all my stuff. Now having to bring someone in who's entirely different, it was jarring for me in many ways. Yeah, but you know, really out of love for her and my dad and the memory of my dad, really wanting to make this work. So the last 3 years has been a learning experience, living with mom and mom living with me.
Wow. You have such a positive attitude about the adventure of life and just constantly learning and growing and adapting. I mean, it's really inspiring. So,
thank you, Matt. Thank you.
So here you are, and I think we're all kind of in this, at some level, in a position of going, okay, the world stopped for a minute. So now what? What's on your mind these days about what you want to do next and what's meaningful for you? What are in the plans for Christina?
Do you know, it's very exciting, I think. It's very exciting. Okay, I wrote that piece, right? And I didn't send you the second blog, but you know, it was literally something to the effect that there was a God, a universal whatever universe, really felt that we all needed to reset.
Take a break.
And since we weren't hitting the reset button,
yeah.
You know, the reset button was hit for us. So, and I'm grateful for that because I didn't have to travel. And, you know, last year I was traveling so much. I actually made a resolution that I wasn't going to travel that much. And COVID kind of did that for me.
Right.
So being grounded here in Singapore, not doing a lot of training and stuff like that, just the coaching, it's given me a lot of time to do even more reflection. Right. And when you're asking me what else is in store, I can't tell you because it's still being created. You know, and it's so exciting. Like, oh my gosh, you know, is this something that I could do? And then there's another voice that says, don't you think it's time to retire? And I'll just shut that voice and say, no, there's this that I could do. Maybe I could.
I don't see that happening.
Still do this.
No way.
Yeah, and
no way.
So it's getting back into me and what I need and what I can grow. What else can I learn? So is that something that I'm interested to learn? And a very important part also is my spiritual life. So having a lot more time and now being a lot more curious there. So buying books and trying to understand my faith more, living my faith more. And yeah, so much going on right now.
You know, we've heard already just in our conversation, like we've talked a lot about these different stages of your life and transitioning between one thing and another, losing your dad, having your mom come in, the business, changing careers.
Yeah.
When you're in a place of great disruption and transition, which is, you know, you wrote a 2-part piece, I think, but the first part was about uncertainty and the difficulty of uncertainty on the human brain, which is absolutely right on. But what do you do intentionally when you realize that you're in? Sometimes if you're like me, you don't always realize you're in a transition, and then until you're a little bit into it, and then you realize, oh wow, things are really shifting. And then, is there anything that you do that has worked for you over the years, with intention, to sort of, I don't know, get more out of the moment, deepen your insights, figure out what to prioritize?
Yeah. So when you're talking about transition, I suppose the biggest transition for me was walking out of the industry and moving into coaching, right? So of course, there were a whole host of reasons. I mean, the organization and the industry in itself was moving in a direction that wasn't really landing well with my values. And I said, okay, it's about time to move on. And I didn't realize how scary it was to even think about transiting into something different. Yeah. 25 years, I mean, I could have just stayed on there and just cruised, but I didn't want to do that. So gung-ho, I said I was going to retire. I was going to retire from that, and I don't know what I was going to do. I was going to do something in the lines of leadership development. Nothing was clear yet. And then the fear gripped me, all right? And I realized that the fear was because over those years, I became attached to things and concepts and stuff like that. And this, you have to unshackle yourself, right? In order to move on. So and that transition actually took me, I mean, I was talking about it for a whole year before I actually did something about it. And then when I actually moved on and I started, I was going to go coaching and stuff like that, it was, I've never been in a situation for many years prior to that. It was just empty in front. So there was that uncertainty. Right, there was uncertainty about, oh my gosh, what's coming, and in that second, yeah. So did I allow myself to be gripped by fear? I guess I did, but maybe just for a second, Matt. And perhaps it was all the training that I was teaching people at that time. It just was like, okay, it's an empty space. It was kind of scary, but oh my gosh, it's exciting. What can I do? What can I do with this? And then coming back to myself to ask, what do you want?
Yeah.
What's the best use of your time? And that's a brilliant question for everyone. I mean, it could be a time management question. It could be a big transition question.
Right.
Right. But
what
is the best use of my time right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do I want? What's the best use of my time? What do I want the rest of my life to look like? So coming back to that space. And I think as long as you're authentic to yourself, about being true to yourself, but what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what do you want your life to be, right? You will know what to do. You will be able to discern, the opportunities that come, whether they fit into that life purpose or not.
What's the role of your community in helping you through those times for you?
Not much. Not much, not because they didn't want to help. Not much because, back to this introvert, I needed to figure things out by myself. And I would only reach out if I needed something. So I guess my community knew me enough to say, when she's ready and she needs to, she'll come ask for it.
I see.
So unsolicited advice, not necessary.
Right.
Yeah. I know it sounds kind of horrible, right? It's like an ego thing, but it wasn't for me. It was really this, I'm not going to ask people something for the sake of asking. All right. I'm going to figure it out myself because who knows you better than you?
Yes. I'm just stopping because it's a lot of times if you ask people advice, you get what they would do. I mean, it's hard for a person to not be very I don't mean self-centered in a negative way, but to come from their own prism. And so, well, I would do this. And it's like, it may not have any relationship to you, actually. It's more a reflection of them. On the other hand, sometimes people can pull out of us things that can facilitate that. I mean, we know that in coaching, right? So I'm curious, when is it in your mind that you go, okay, now's the time I'm going to reach out to my friend to process something, or to sounding board, to ask them to be a sounding board? Is that something that you do? And what's the kind of thing that you would, what are the conditions under which you go, okay, yeah, this is where I need to reach out. I've processed it enough internally.
Yeah. So really, it's down to that processing, right? So when I say internally processing, I'm not just sitting down and umming it away. Yeah. I actually write. I journal. I actually put down. I self-coach, Matt. It's interesting. I never even knew it was coaching. Yeah. For all the years I've been doing it. Yeah. I won't trust myself to just have a conversation with myself. I would write a question. So at the end of every year, when I have my little sabbatical moment where I plan for myself for the year, I would actually write a series of, at that time, I didn't realize how effective it was. They were open-ended questions. And I would write these questions and I would answer them as though somebody asked me those questions. And I would actually type them out. And I find that the process of answering them, it was really just coaching myself, and things were coming up. And if there was something that I said, oh, wow, this is something that I'd like to ask Matt, because I think Matt's really good in this area. Mm-hmm. So I would go and ask you. Or if I've done all my journaling and I said, I just want to know whether this really sounded way out, I'll just run it by a friend whom I know won't laugh me to death.
Yeah.
And just to get a sense of, how does that sound? Yeah. So do I really ask for advice? No, because I know that, like what you were saying, when people ask me for advice, what can I tell them? And I can only tell them what I would do, and that may not mean anything to them.
That's right.
Right. So I don't want to put people in a position where I ask them for advice, and if they were to give me advice, then I'm going to feel obliged that I have to do it, even though it doesn't resonate with me.
Yes.
So, yeah.
It's funny because I find myself sometimes about big decisions, if I don't ask for straight up advice very often, but if I do, I had this realization recently about a big decision. And I definitely have people in my life, I'm sure you do too, who I know care about me a lot and would genuinely give me advice. Mm-hmm. The answer's inside of me. And sometimes that answer is scary to me. And so I might be actually going to somebody else to try and to lower the fear, knowing full well that no matter what they say, I'm going to end up coming right back. It's like driving down a cul-de-sac, and you're like, I don't know how long this cul-de-sac. Eventually you're going to have to turn around. You're going to be back on your street, and you're going to have to dig and figure out what it is that you really want. Yeah. Wow. So you were self-coaching for years. What are some examples of powerful questions that you can recall using many times that were effective?
Does it align with my purpose, my life purpose? Right. So I always like it to be, in the words of the Covey doctrine, it's your true north, right? So what is your life purpose? And I'm very clear what my life purpose is. So anything that I'm doing, any crossroads at a decision, I need to make sure that the decision I make aligns with that. Mm-hmm. And it allows me, one of my top values, when we do the values assessment, one of my top values is authenticity. Mm-hmm. So does that allow me to be authentic? Can I be me to do that? And does that support the life mission that I have, or the purpose of my life?
Right.
Yeah. So some questions would be, what would it mean to me? Okay. And of course, depending on the situation. So there are no great power questions. It will be, who else will be impacted by this? Right. And would that matter to me? Mm-hmm. Yeah. right? Because the whole world could be impacted, but maybe it doesn't matter to me.
Right.
Okay, so I do ask myself these. I put myself in the corner by asking, so I could actually be honest and say, no, I don't really care if it impacts this person in this way, or I really care,
Yeah.
right? And I can be honest with myself because I'm doing it on paper.
Wow. Do you keep journals of all that stuff, or do you
I do.
process and leave it? You do? Yeah.
I no, I keep it, but I think I mentioned this to you before. I've written and I write it. I call it. I title the document "Random Thoughts."
Mm.
All right, so it's Random Thoughts 2017, Random Thoughts 2018, and I'll just go in there and I'll put the date, and I'll sometimes it's questions, sometimes it's just thoughts, or just me expounding, something that's in my head, and then I never go back to read them
You keep
because I
them.
don't think it's I
Yeah.
keep them,
But you
but I
don't read
never
them.
read them
Yeah.
because it's the process that
Yes.
I think clarifies it for me enough to move on.
Mm. Are you handwriting or do you type?
Type,
Type.
yeah, type, because sometimes the amount of things that I'm doing, I probably get carpal tunnel syndrome just
Yeah, just the
scribbling.
sheer volume. I mean, that's the trouble with
Yeah,
handwriting is that you're so limited by the amount you can actually write. Yeah.
yeah, and I type very fast, so it helps because the thoughts are flowing, and I just want to just
Uh-huh.
type it out.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to come back for one more try here. So what's cuz we I think I asked you what's coming next for you, but it sounds, I mean, what's on your mind what's on the horizon for you now? What are some of the things you're processing? If you're willing to share them, you may be in the
Okay.
process
Oh,
of
for sure.
processing. Yeah.
Yeah. So one, okay, we'll talk about the work side or the professional side.
Any
Yeah.
side. Yeah.
First,
Yeah.
I uh, I'm going to further my coaching accreditation, so I'm going to go for my MCC. That's for sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got more than enough hours for that. Just have to get the process down. Uh, what am I going to do with that? That's just something I put on my name card and make me feel good about it. And yeah, the
Yeah.
other thing I want to do as far as coaching is concerned is I'm going to pursue becoming a coach supervisor. So
Mm.
I'm going to get myself certified as a coaching supervisor because I think there's so much. Um, this industry can benefit from mentoring and supervision. Although we always think about coaching as a very individual thing. You run your own business, you have your own clients, and you have your own practice. But I think as an industry, there are some things that really need to be aligned. The
Yeah.
competencies. Are you doing it right? Are you messing somebody up or whatever it is? So and I've had a lot of experience in mentoring other
Mm-hmm.
coaches, and I love that because it's coaching the coach in a sense, but I
Yeah.
want to be able to do it in a supervision way, right? Because I think that's something that's needed down the road, right?
Wow.
Coach supervision. Yeah.
I can't think of anybody better uh, than you. I mean, that seems like a perfect next step. Yeah.
Thank you. And another
Wow.
thing that kind of just came up a couple of days ago is I might want to design kind of like a coaching course, not so much a big coaching certification course, but something that you know uh, additional stuff that coaches can attend, right? That either whether it's ICF accredited or not, but again to
Mm-hmm.
support the coaches because it's not an easy business if you really think about it. It's
Yeah.
not an easy business, and what is it I teach you guys? When we're in the class, that it is a privilege to coach someone. So you really need to respect that relationship,
Yeah.
and there's a responsibility involved. It's not just a contract that you do. There's that responsibility for that person's growth and thinking, etc. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of support that can go in that direction.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and that's a whole cavern of fascinating things to go down. Maybe for another
Yeah.
discussion, because it's it's so true. It is a privileged relationship, and
It is.
and this has been a privilege to sit here with you and have a relationship with you after this number of years now, and learn from you still and laugh a little bit. I guess I'd like to leave with one last nugget of wisdom from you, if I could, and that's, what would you say to anybody, particularly a leader out there who's struggling with this massive transition to an unknown future right now? What would you say to them to help them through it?
This too shall pass, and human beings are so adaptable that we will adapt and we will thrive. But if you're a leader, I think the important thing is get out of your own head and listen to your people. All right? When you're dealing with someone else, and when you're trying to help them, you will find the answer. You will know how to create that new reality that's going to work for your team. I think a lot of leaders trying to figure out things and say, oh, I'm just going to create this, and this is going to be the new normal, and I'll pluck the people in.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should work the other way around.
Mm.
Why don't we hear what are the concerns that people have, and then we create it. Of course, depending on how much leeway you have in creating it for the people, rather than creating it in your head and then fitting people into your plan.
Mm. That is phenomenal advice. Or is it advice?
It is.
Oh my
is.
Lord. We've trapped ourselves now.
Yes, we have.
But I do really appreciate it, because I that is just very insightful, and I think imposing things on others as opposed to working with them to work to create that future together with buy-in and flexibility.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time, heart, energy, wisdom.
Thank you. I had so much fun, Matt.